spring seat. We have brought one speaker here that has created quite a buzz on campus. People have been talking about the Yellow House, and we all know what that is. So I'm very pleased to actually welcome back the Reverend Edward M. Cardoza, who is one of the residents of the Yellow House and our neighbor. And I am very much looking forward to learn about the Yellow House today. Thank you, Ed.
Thanks so much. Lest I give you communion or hear your confession, you can just call me Ed. Do you hear me?
In the front, but not back.
Microphone is right here.
Oh.
So don't turn your head.
I feel like I'm back with my father. Everyone can hear now? Try not to turn my head. We've had some technical difficulties, so we'll work through them. First, I want to thank you for inviting me and my spouse, Al. We have had a long standing relationship with RiverMead, as you actually owned the Yellow House at one point. And the powers that be here decided that we would be the right group to come in and renovate and restore the building back to its 1826 grandeur. So I hope we've done well at that. It has taken several years. It's still working, done if you go by it. So there's two things I want to do here. One, because we can't all trot across the path, I want to give you some idea of what the condition was when we took the house over and where the condition is now. But I'd also like to give a little bit of history. I know some of you have heard the history, but I think it's really important to be able to understand the history of Peterborough and where this house came from. Because even though the house is 1826, it's actually a very old house for Peterborough. Despite how most of us get into Peterborough, many of the towns around us, their houses are 1770, 1780, 1790, 1800. We don't actually have a lot of those here. And that's because this was a very difficult town to settle. In fact, they made several settlement attempts, and every time they came in, the Native Americans pushed them back because the Native Americans were onto the idea that if you cede your land, you're not going to get it back. And so this area took some time to settle. So I'm going to go back up to the podium, and I'm going to just do a little bit. I had a PowerPoint, we can't filter that in, but I think just a few details to give us a timeline before we start looking at the rest of the house.
He's a good speaker because I think that he's not slowly.
I do, I have lots of practice speaking slowly. So the early settlers that came into Peterborough arrived here on May 5th, 1762. And they were speculators from Massachusetts. And they ceded over a ton of acreage to what were then called proprietors. These were people who were going to speculate and try to settle the land and encourage other folks to come in and make use of the land. And here in Peterborough, because of our river system, the most logical use of this area was to use it for milling. But it was also a place that had a lot of sheep, and more sheep than people at one point. It also grew flax. And if you don't know what flax is, you grow flax, you submerge it into water, then you beat it, and it becomes very, very thin like here. And that's where linen comes from. A very long process, but it produces high quality linen. So that was really what this was being used for. And 268 acres in 1762 were ceded over to John White. And that land was dormant until 1826. And in 1826, that original settlement broke off into about 25 acre parcels. And the first parcel was purchased from Robert White by George McCrillis and Jane McCrillis. So if you drive by the house, you'll see George S. McCrillis actually listed on the house. So he was the first owner of the property. He was the builder of the Yellow House. He was a blacksmith by trade. And in those days, being a blacksmith was a rather dangerous hobby, along with being the minister of the community. Because the two people who got driven out more times than anybody else were blacksmith, who was poaching on another person's trade, and the minister, who was either not liked or developed a drinking problem. The first 4 community ministers in Peterborough were moved because they had problems with the drink. George and Jane were only here for 12 months. So think about 1826, no power tools. They raised those timbers. They got it completely sided in with a roof. And they also had 5 kids. And he decided, well, maybe I gotta get out of here. And so his brother just coincidentally married into one of the more well-off families. And it seems like they decided that right after that wedding, they were gonna load up and head out to Niagara Falls. And both him and his brother Bowden became land speculators there, gave up the craft of blacksmithing, and actually became 2 of the families that created and founded towns there, all of which was based upon lumber. They took the lumber, they milled the lumber, they sold the lumber. And so they made a very hefty profit. Out of curiosity, I decided, I wonder if there's any chance that George McCrillis's family is anywhere around. If any of you do genealogy, how many people do genealogy? Genealogy, do you do genealogy?
Sally McCrillis
Sally McCrillis
from Newport,
from Newport, Rhode Island, or Newport, New Hampshire.
Newport, New Hampshire.
So I started to follow down McCrillis's, and I found out that they went from New Hampshire to New York to Virginia. And then I got the email, and I emailed this guy who was a lawyer, so I knew I was in trouble already. Because he was gonna think I was scamming him, right? And I said, I think your father was so-and-so, and your grandfather was such and such, and your great-grandfather was such and such, and your great-great-great-grandfather was so-and-so, and he built this house. And he said, you know more about my family than I do. And so we got to exchange that this was in fact the great-great-great-great-grandson of George McCrillis. There were only 2 descendants left of that line, none of them from Newport, however. And 3 things I want to tell you though. Once that transfer went from being a blacksmith shop, it then took up residence being a carding mill. Have you ever heard that term, a carding mill? So when you shear the sheep, take the wool, and then it goes through a real rickety-clack machine and it pulls out the wool, separates it. It became a carding mill. And if you look just before you go over the bridge, get the van to slow down one day. As you go by our house and you go by the road, and just as you get to the bridge, if you look right, you will see a peninsula and an inlet. That's where the carding mill was. And they had a sloop ship, and they would open it up and the river would be diverted and the wheel mechanism was there. That stayed there all the way to 1877. Basically went through carding mill as the Civil War happened, as we started to transition into different materials and different labor pools. They then decided, well, wool doesn't seem to be the thing today. What are we going to do? And they shifted it to be all about dyeing. So what they would do is they would encourage, particularly women, you know that dress last year that was blue? Let's make it purple. And you would bring all your garments and you would re-dye them and recast them and pull off a bow and put on a new bow. And you'd have a beautiful new outfit. And that went for a pretty long time, until about 1877. And then what you started to see was lots of fabric available, very inexpensively. And at the same time, you saw dressmaker after dressmaker after dressmaker showing up down on Grove Street, advertising in the newspaper, coming in from Keene. So one time they were out having dinner and they said, look, the mill's on fire. Nobody seemed to move too quickly and the mill burnt all the way to the ground. So it went from McCrillis to the Wilson family, from the Wilson family to the Kimball family. The Kimball family was in there. They were one of the larger families that stayed in the property. As you're going down Grove Street with RiverMead at your back, the bridge at your back, going past our house on the left, you'll see a white house 2 doors down from our house. That was Kimball's son. So that house was built in about 1839. That was his son's house. So that whole street was really kind of the Kimball empire. You may have seen the Kimball Dam. The Kimball Dam was one of the first electrically powered dams, and that was there. The house then went through a really intriguing moment on 2 fronts. The first is speculative. Everybody hear that? This is mere speculation. We believe that the Wilson family were devout Baptists. There were not a lot of New England Baptists in Peterborough at that time. Unitarians were running rampant here. They were the controllers. They were the controllers of Peterborough. The Baptists were just kind of a little bit off for them. They didn't like to drink, and they were clearly anti-slavery, big abolitionists. So the Cheney family, here and the Wilsons were praying together. They also appeared to be running some version of the Underground Railroad together. And we suspect, well, we know that there are a number of houses in Peterborough that were on the Underground Railroad. We suspect that Grove Street was also on the Underground Railroad, that it was part of the safety of houses on this passage up to get people up into Canada. Remember, it was a railroad that ran behind the house, a physical railroad behind the house that allowed you to move very, very quickly up and around. We met a woman who we believe is the last woman born in the house, Dolly Flynn. Dolly Flynn was born in a bedroom where 158 people were born. 62 people died. They're often called the birthing rooms. Much better word than the dying room. And when Dolly came, she told a really intriguing story that her grandmother, who had lived in the house, had always said to her, this house is a place of safety for people of color. And she would hang up a handkerchief at the end of the property near that railroad track. And it was a sign for people to come down and get food. It was a sign for people that if you wanted to stay and hang up in the hayloft, you could stay out in the hayloft. So we believe that that is really tied to the Wilsons. We're still working on that. Frederick Douglass, as you know, spoke in Peterborough a number of times. The Cheneys were very active. The Cheneys went on to found Bates College in Lewiston, Maine, that one portion of that family. So we're trying to figure that out. The second piece of information that people were a little surprised at because they've gotten lost. Everybody knows about the McDowells and the McDowell property and the McDowell art. Well, we started going through the history of real detailed versions of the Summer Almanac. And we found out that the McDowells spent their first 3 summers in our house. And not only did she spend the first 3 summers, she wrote about it extensively. And then she came back and visited sometime, I think, was it 1907. And she signed one of the glass panels and windows. And guess what we found? Her signature on the glass panes. So the McDowells started their life here. She came off the train. She had been encouraged to come here by one of the Morrison clan. Got off the train like a naive Bostonian. Here I am. And everyone's like, what are you doing here? Everything is closed. Not much has changed. So they went and got her, and they introduced her to Ellen Kimball. And Ellen Kimball at that point was living alone, probably not able to afford things. And one of the townsfolk was like, you're going to come live with me for this. Imagine this. You're going to come live with me for the summer. And you're renting out this house for 3 months to these Bostonians. And the money that you make in those 3 months will get you through the rest of the 9 months. That's how it worked back then. So that's just a little bit of history. The house was in the Waite family all the way through until it went into foreclosure. Very sad state of events. RiverMead came in to preserve the house. Obviously, it's sort of on that back side of your campus. And then I think the executive director at that time was like, what are we doing on that side when we're trying to take care of this side? And it was up for sale. And it was in terrible shape. But it was untouched, what we call in the historic preservation world, unmuddled. Every door, every pane of glass, every piece of blacksmith latch, it was all there. It did not go through its 1960s, 1970s beautification projects. Any of you need those beautification projects? No shag carpets, no paneling, no lowered ceilings. Never went through any of that because it was always owned by people who were poor. And poverty can sometimes be a good friend to historic preservation. So I'm going to go to the back and hopefully you'll still hear me. You won't see me. You won't have to put up with looking at me. But we're going to shift our attention here. This is the upstairs bedroom. This is actually the bedroom that we know that McDowells were in when they came for the first 3 summers. So you notice the stenciling, 1980s, nothing historic about it. People were worried about the stenciling. I was like, J.C. Penney, 1980, don't worry about it. Linoleum, 1936. All of the newspaper from 1936 was still there. But you can see here all of the woodwork, all of the panels, all of the plaster, the corner post, all intact. This all had to be taken down carefully, de-leaded. But now we can do a little bit of fun picture look. That's what it looks like right now. This was the lovely kitchen. Notice the stove on the right side. You see the two doors. The fireplace had been sort of sealed off. And then you had a working stove in there. If you are familiar with the land was right up against the house. So we had to get that land off. And we had to put in a fireplace that's a bit more. Here's the kitchen. So this kitchen is designed by a pretty famous kitchen designer who builds kitchens in the taste of 1780s to 1830s. Tiger maple. That's where our microwave and coffee, everything is hidden for the most part, except for the stove. And it's designed to look like pieces of furniture that came in. But this particular kitchen was inspired by a kitchen down in Sturbridge Village. That was our lovely dining room with historic wallpaper. If you went in to clean the house, because I know a few of you did, there was a giant hole where Al is standing. And that's where we were greeted by a raccoon bobbing its head up from the dog Archie. So one of the fun things about doing a house like this is not only peeling it back, it's furnishing it. So we put as our date 1820 to 1830, and then went about finding furniture and paintings from New Hampshire, 1820. And you can see it just brings the house to life, right? It starts to feel pretty significant. We're gonna watch a little video here. So some of you may be old timers and know what a buttery is. This was something that was hidden behind one of the walls next to the fireplace. The fireplace in those days would have been continuously going. And so this was a place to store your goods that you valued, your oils and things that you didn't want to get too cold. And so we restored the buttery. And a lot of it's in these details, right? Bill's here. We went up to visit one of Bill's family's houses. And we got this idea right out of a house. So the places where things were missing, we went to the local environment and we're like, how do we create something that, although it's new, is going to look old? And so all of these details, this is called a parson's closet. It's called a parson's closet because it had two functions. It stored the family Bible. And it stored the booze. Because guess who was allowed to drink on Sundays while everybody else could not drink? The parson. And hence why the poor parson often developed a problem. It was thought that the medicinal value to keep the parson warm going from house to house to house was an elixir to preserve him. It didn't always work out.
You can't preserve things in alcohol. Oh, nice.
This is a really interesting photo because it shows when the siding was taken off. The siding that was on there when we got the house was only its second siding. So the first siding we think lasted to about 1899 because when we pulled off, we were able to see a few original boards that actually had the mill marks of a railroad company and lumber company that had a 2-year life. And then this lasted for almost 120 years. Before it was known as the Yellow House, it was known as the Brown House. And the reason why it was known as the Brown House is because they did not paint it. They would simply put up the materials and then they would weather and they would eventually go brown and they would eventually go black. So when you go down to places like Salem, Massachusetts, and you see those black houses, that's not because the Puritans wanted it that way. It's because that's how they aged. And a lot of people paint their houses dark black because it takes on that patina. We weren't able to save everything. And one of the places we had to let go was what is called the historic L. This would have been where the family would have had its 2 horses. And those 2 teeny windows on the left-hand side were a very unique feature of the house, a 2-story chicken coop. So even though we knocked it down, we preserved it exactly as it is. So this was the inspiration for that piece. And this is what starts to happen when you build it out. It's a double-sided parson's closet. All of this brick was taken down individually, scrubbed individually, and then restacked. Alexander Pendlebury is a historic medicine. We were able to get him to work. So if you notice, we took down all of the bricks and put back, I think about 85 or 90% of the bricks, which is an extraordinary amount to get back in. They're still functioning there. This is the birthing room. We were able to save the birthing room, even though we took down the L, we were able to save the entrance into the birthing room. We had to replace a few doors. But you can see here, just finding local furniture. Pick this up for $50. And the painting there I got for $60. Instant ancestors, as we call This is an interesting piece that I just wanted to show, and then we can have a little bit of a conversation. I was in a barn between here and Manchester. And there was a box, and I went into the box, and here was this quilt. And the quilt had on it 1848. It was rebuilt in 1890. So I don't know whether that first date is right or wrong, but again, as you add these layers, right? You add the woodwork, you add the right paint colors, you add the right furniture, and then you even start adding these colors. It just makes the house just pop. I think that that's probably gonna be good. Oh, I do want to put a couple other things with you. People ask about where did that color come from?
Yeah.
Anybody recognize this building? It's from the Shaker, Shaker colony. This is the carpentry house. This was a very popular color in the 1820s. And we decided to go with it because it would be as authentic as we could possibly have it. And you can see that it really pops, right? All of the lighting was made in Essex, New Hampshire. All done in wonderful, wonderful copper. Northeast lantern, great place. Oh, people wanted to see it at Christmas time, so. There's nothing like an old New England house at Christmas. And this fireplace with another Parsons cabinet. This is called a Rumford fireplace. I don't know if anyone's ever had an historic house, but Count Rumford wanted to create a fire that would draft well so that you wouldn't have a lot of smoke, but would put a lot of heat back out. They're extremely high and extremely shallow. And you think, this doesn't look like a safe thing. You don't put your logs horizontally, you put your logs vertically and lean them up against. That one fireplace could heat the entire house.
Wow.
It grows out an extraordinary amount. And I'll leave with this picture. What we did in choosing paint colors is poor Al had to use, was it from Switzerland? It was a Switzerland based product that uses infrared technology, and the infrared penetrates all of the paint layers and pulls them off one by one by one. So the good news is it gets rid of all the lead. The second good news, particularly for Al, is it doesn't create particles. It keeps everything liquidy, so it's not going out to the environment, so it contains the lead. Doesn't release any bad vapors like a paint gun, but it's cutting through it like butter. So you could see the first coat on all of the terms. And then you could take that and you could match it up to the National Historic Trust partnered with New England Homes, and there was a historic paint line. And what was shocking to us is one by one by one, as we took these chips of wood, they matched exactly the color patterns of palettes. This is a pretty intense color, right? It's not what I would choose for the house. And you don't like people have stronger feelings, but that's okay. It's the first color that's there. And the fireplace was black. This was a very common thing. Lots of myths came up around this. The myth was, oh, when President Washington died, the country was despondent and painted all of its fireplaces black. And if that one doesn't work for you, it's Lincoln was shot, the country was just in grief, they painted all the fireplaces black. The truth is they painted them black because they were so smoky. And it was a logical choice.
It's a hard turn anyway.
So we painted this color. And then we went down to Sturbridge Village. We had to buy an annual pass because we were just down there all the time. And we're in this house, and all of a sudden we see this exact same color combo. And the facilitator, the docent who was in the house said that was an extraordinarily popular color in the 1820s. She said it was arsenic based. And I thought, oh boy. And there are stories of kids licking the paint and getting arsenic poisoning. But it is a very particular green. And it's a color that we've learned to live with. It's probably the most controversial color, I think, in the house. But our favorite two colors are a blue that's known sometimes as Lexington blue. The color that was with the nation really from the 1730s all the way through the 1860s. And then the other one is Portsmouth Spice, which was like a person. It's kind of got a little red and a little pink. But it's a fun color because when you get up in the morning and you have your English muffin, it looks sort of cherry orange and red. And then by the time the sun is setting, it sort of takes on this deep burgundy hue. I'm gonna stop there. See if there are questions. You can ask whatever you want. Whether I answer them, I don't know. What would you like to hear? Okay.
Yes, on your windows, I noticed that you have 4, 8, 12, and then 8 above. And then eventually you went down to smaller ones, like 3, 6, 9 or something. How come you changed?
So the windows on the main house.
Yeah.
Are the original windows, and that's the setup. They were
8/12.
They were 8/12.
Yes,
Which, if you notice, is actually the reverse of what most other houses are. They would put the smaller ones down below and the bigger one up top, because on these roads, when the stagecoaches were going, they actually opened their windows from the top and kept their bottom sashes lower. So it's a little bit different. We had to really figure out where they were in the right placement. The places that you probably have seen the other smaller sashes are in the L. Those windows are not the historic windows. Those windows match the windows that went on that L. That L was probably built 10, 15 years after the original house. All of those windows,
The glass size is 7x9.
7x9, they had to be taken out, put into a steaming device, steamed, then all of the putty taken off, each of the glasses labeled the order in which they came from, put into little sorting boxes, then you had to remove all of the paint, then you had to put your coat of primer on, and then you had to put your additional coats, and then reglazed, painted, primed, painted. So how many months did it take?
It took, off and on, almost 10, 11 months.
It was 10 months. I was gonna say.
It was a side job along with everything else.
And sadly, when you do a house like this, that's usually the first thing that people take out. And if you take out those windows, it's like taking out the eyes of a person. You lose a lot. You lose a lot. Yes.
What did you do to plaster? And what did you do to plaster? It looks clearly like it is real plaster, so how did you do that? Because I don't know, I was from 1813, so I know that was challenging. And then did you do any insulation or did you just assume the plaster was gonna be adequate?
No. So even though we have brought it back to 1826, there's lots of modern conveniences. One of which is it's very well insulated. It's insulated with rock wool mineral. So no anything you do to an historic house, you need to be able to undo. So no spray foam. Everybody was trying to sell a spray foam. They were cursing us in town. Spray foam, they won't do spray foam, they're gonna stay rock wool and is a great soundproofer. Rodents and ants don't like it, neither do mice. It's also a neutral material. It's something that's there. So we did all of that. The heating system is
What was the plaster? What did you do?
we'll get there. Heat pump system is all able to go solar, so that's the next step. Plaster, when we took down the original plaster, it had to come down because it was saturated with raccoon pee and rat pee and mildew, it all came down. What we had was split blades where they took wide boards, used the knives and pulled the actual wide boards down. Plaster system went on top of that, and the plaster was done by a guy from Fitchburg who brought in a group of 6 guys. That was something that we did not do, so the plaster system went on. And the plaster system was a little rough as opposed to smooth, so that when you paint it, how's that look? So plasters are, as you know, it's a gift.
Oh, yeah.
It's not our gift. Yes,
I think the ceilings look low.
they are.
And you just, well, of course, you did decide to keep them that way. When you took the plaster down from the ceilings, what did you find above?
So this is a really important question from an historic preservation. Do you make it functional so that the insurance company is really, really happy? Or do you dig in and say, this is what the house was? When this house,
Also the building inspector.
the building. We're in Peterborough, be careful. When this house was built, the plaster was like the gold leaf of the house.
Yeah.
They were very, very proud of plaster. In the 1780s house, the wood would have been featured. So we knew that they were very proud of the plaster. The plaster was extraordinarily thin, because it was still something that was, you know, resourced and taken care of. So we had 2 choices. All of the ceilings on the first floor are 8 feet,
Just under.
just under 8 feet, livable. Not the 15 feet that we all grow accustomed to today, but livable. I'm 6 feet, so I was okay. There's 2 upstairs rooms. 6.5 feet.
6'7".
6'7".
Oh.
Now, we could have, when we took it down, could have taken down the lab. We could have suspended above the rafters and put in a wood ceiling. But we decided to go with the plaster. We think that it actually makes the house feel unique. And it's not very claustrophobic, but those 2 rooms, there's only 2 rooms. They are low. They are warm as a result. And they're cozy. They would not be free. But we made an intentional decision after much encouragement. Much fighting. Portion of classified. We kept it as is. You up? Yes.
I owned a house of this era in Lyme, Connecticut.
Yeah, beautiful place.
The fireplace is the Rumford fireplace. By the 1790s, northern Vermont was being timbered off to supply firewood to southern New England. And the cutting around here was tremendous. As the price of firewood went up, Rumford developed this design with a very shallow back, the traditional English back. If you want to date an old house, you go back through the layers of brick that have been burned through. Our house was painted this acrylic orange, which was available. It was called by the local gentry, the Halloween house. It looked good in the fall with the leaf colors, but the minute we left, it reverted to its colonial white past.
So people love white New England houses. The truth of the matter is that's another one of these sort of myths, right? Because a pure white paint didn't really exist. So obviously, yes, they were cream colored and white colored, variation colored houses, often with the hunter, the six green historic windows, but we do sometimes get called the pumpkin house. We do love the house in the fall, but we also have to say that during that white snowfall, it pops. So if you ever need a flea RiverMead, I'm sure you'll be able to see the yellow in the midst of it. Yes.
What about all the floorboards? Did you take all those up and you finish them, or are these all fine?
All of the floorboards from the second floor survived intact and are actually in situ. The floorboards that were downstairs in the living room went upstairs on the second floor to the addition so that there was consistency among the whole second floor. Then we worked with a lumberyard out in Western Mass. We were taking down some heritage trees, as they call them. And we had them build up the boards in the exact same dimensions. All of the boards in the front of the house were at 15 foot 7 inches, one single board across. So it's pretty hard to get 15 or 7 in 12 and 14-inch wide, but if you get the right guy or gal, they obsess with you and they make sure that they get you what they want. So we're able to get that. So they are pine, heritage pine, which is what is throughout the house.
Yes. You talked about the Underground Railroad and the interest in it. As you were taking down plaster, did you find any evidence around the fireplaces of storage of human beings?
We found no evidence of storage of human beings. There was behind the fireplace a channel. That channel went from the basement all the way up through the side of the fireplace into the attic. And that's actually now where our heating system lies. We kept it intact, but it was a core. And so that was behind the butter. So you went in through a closet and there was a double door. And that double door also appeared upstairs to the second floor. So that is a question that we have, that there is definitely within the stack a place. We found lots of baubles. One of the great things is we were told that the Scotch Irish who settled this area, Acrylis was Scotch Irish, that they put baby shoes or children's shoes in the site of the corner of the fireplace. And sure enough, baby leather shoes. Those went back, did not play around with those. They went right back. And they also had what they were called Scottish hex marks. They're very worried about witches, very worried about evil spirits, and they were very worried that that fireplace was the channel for all of those spirits. And so on the boards, you would see Celtic knots, or what looked like Celtic knots.
On the inside
On
boards?
the inside boards of the fireplace, so protection.
Could it possibly have been like a ladder climbing from the basement of the first floor up to the third floor for safety?
Up to the attic, yeah.
Attic rather. I had a house that did have one of those rooms built in the fireplace area where one or two possibly humans would stand for short periods of time.
Yeah, you could definitely have gone from the first floor into the attic. There was also a room over the birthing room that went through a very small team door. That actually had lots and lots of signs of bulbs, seeds, nuts. We couldn't figure out if the animals had brought that in, but it looked like you were looking at 25, 50 years sort of storage. That's where we found little pieces of broken pottery, not pieces of broken boards, plates. There's always something on the internet, right? We're learning there's always something on the internet. There's a whole group called shards, SHARDS. And you take a picture of what you find in your attic. And then within 20 minutes, somebody says this pattern is from Keene, New Hampshire. It was produced between 1810 and 1830 by such and such pattern. So we just, that was part of it. And there was a lot of fun.
Would you describe what you did with the backyard? We when the house was vacant and derelict, we took a trip not through the house, but we peeked in the windows, and then we walked through that tangle of backyard, and it's clear because you had machines back there. Was that septic? Would you describe that sort of landscape project?
Yeah, so, and Al can chime in if you want. In those days, it was a lot to remove land. So first of all, it was very, very physically difficult to move land. Second thing is there was a thought that by building up to the land, you were protecting yourself from the winds. And so it wasn't uncommon to sort of nudge the house in. Third, by nudging that house in, one of the largest maple trees in all of Peterborough, a very beloved maple tree, had come in and broken through the foundation. And it was getting to the point where the house was not going to be able to stand if we didn't do something. So when we started to clear, the thought was we should just clear 10 feet. And then we had an old timer and his son, and the old timer said to us, this is all sand. We have the machines. Let's clear this out. It should be pasture, turn it back into wildflowers, get all of these trees up off the house. This was all cleared. It was all denuded for furniture and firewood. Get it back. And if you ever want to do solar, you can put your solar up there. It won't be seen from the street, and you'll have an extraordinarily good thing. So what we did is we sold that sand, and that paid for actually the removal of it. So I think we did a good thing in that we're able to pull the land back. We're able to restore what has become a pretty beautiful, if you see the flowers, the wildflowers, not so much last year, but the year before. Lots of new birds and butterflies. Unfortunately, a lot of ticks. But that's what we did. Is septic. Everybody thinks there's a septic system there. There isn't. We're really lucky. We're actually on town sewer. So, one of the great things about an old house out in Peterborough is you don't have to worry about a septic system. I'm a city kid. I just like to flush my toilet and never have to worry about it. So we got that here.
Tell us about the brown farm.
Yeah.
Oh, the barn?
Yeah, over there and.
Well, we'll take up a collection.
Right.
That barn exists on the historic foundation of the original barn that was burned to the ground in the 80s by lightning. So the goal would be, and I'm a priest, Al's retired, money isn't exactly flowing in anymore. The goal would be that those strange windows that are on the porch would be returned into a more, which you'd have where the cows would normally stick their heads out of. So you close that up. And that the upstairs would be a ADU, an accessible accessory dwelling unit, and that we maybe be able to provide somebody affordable housing here. So that's kind of the goal. There's Al's workshop is there, that's the main part of that, there's a porch there. But we would like to get that more integrated into the house. And then probably paint it a very complementary red orange, that would be historic. And get the roof done. So we're not gonna tear it down, we're gonna be just, that whole structure, if you tweaked those strange windows. And then tweak the barn doors below, it would suddenly change the feel.
Did you live in the barn?
We lived in the barn, it's not a rumor. We lived in the barn. We will never, ever, ever do that again. Right? No matter which one of us says, "No, not through it." It was cold. It was, you sometimes heard things go rubble, rubble in the middle of the night that you weren't quite sure if they were in the bed with you. We won't do that again. But yes, we lived in the barn.
What can you tell us about the bathroom? Aesthetic? Their bathrooms or?
Yeah, wait, I guess we don't have a picture of the bathrooms. So there were two very scary bathrooms. They were, well, there was originally an outhouse. And then probably the only adaptations to that place happened in 1920 and then in 1950. In 1920, they put a bathroom in the first floor. And in 1950, they made it into a two-family. So on one level, the Waits lived, and then the Waits' daughter, Beaverstock, some of you may know that name, Eleanor Beaverstock. She actually was in charge of the cow, the Guernsey Society. She headed that. She's a well-known person in town. She lived on the second floor with her husband. So there was a kitchen and a bathroom up there. By the time we had arrived, they were pretty scary. We cleaned the upstairs one up, which we were able to use. Sadly, I don't know. The bathrooms look like the kitchen. So they're modern. And very comfortable with heated floors. The floors are slatish. The cabinet is cherry with beautiful slate. So it's about as close to the taste of the house, but it was a modern 2024 bathroom, which quite frankly do have your standards, right? So one of your standards is, one of your standards is you gotta have a comfortable place. Two, you needed to have a room that was non-drafty. And we got that when we built the L. That's where we spend most of our time. It's the place where the fireplace is. And then the third is air conditioning. So we have all of that there. Air conditioning is really important.
Some of the heat free with the heat pumps.
Sure that you're continuing conditions to keep it clean and safe.
Any ghosts in your house?
I hate to tell you, you do not feel that. I have been in other places, including a very haunted rectory. A haunted rectory so haunted that we started to investigate it and we realized that the former rector who was there during the colonial period was a Tory and was going to Canada, Church of England, killed his wife and stuck her in the fireplace. And that was in Taunton, Massachusetts. It was you could not sit in that rectory without something really bad. So we were hoping for a ghost. We didn't get a ghost. Our best ghost was this guy who died in 1985 who was in our 1966 split level ranch. He was quite out.
Was there a soapstone sink in the kitchen? Was it original?
It was not. That soapstone sink is based upon something that was our old Sturbridge. We partnered with a guy in Portsmouth. And he and his son came, took the measurements. You find these crafters. So it is fully replicated to look just like that particular piece. And we did the same with the bathrooms. The sinks that are in the bathrooms are the same as makes a huge difference. Also, my mother loves soapstone sinks, never understood why she loves soapstone sinks. they're not the best thing for charm if you drop them. However, they are great with heat. They just don't dirty. They are like they really weird. Right?
Every time I go by a house, I look at the chimney, about frequently, or not recently, in the past, there's been smoke coming up. The smoke has disappeared. So how are you eating now? So, or do you ever put a fire in the fire seasons?
Yes, so we have two operable fireplaces, one in the L where that horse drawn room is, and the other is that blue fireplace. Couple of things. We also, in the basement of the main house, took out one of the flues so that we had a wood stove, because the house is currently heat pumped. We always knew that if like the electricity goes off for 7 days, what are we gonna do? So there's a major wood stove downstairs in the basement that could heat the whole thing. One of the reasons why we may not see smoke is those fireplaces burn extremely hot and very, very efficient. And generally we get pretty dry wood and that doesn't go. So that's probably what you're seeing not happening. Is high wood.
I think it's really neat to see this.
Well, we'll work on that. We'll elect a pope and get some smoke out. Yes. So it had in the front, if you look at the house from the street, there's a very, very narrow staircase there. Actually, let me show you something really quick because it's kind of super cool. There's a very narrow set in the front of the house. We call it the death staircase. This is the staircase that we put in the back, but it's what's called a step staircase. This is a very old construction. It's not poor carpentry, as one person suggested when they came out. This is very traditional form, and something that you would have found in an 1820s house. It's painted, it's done in pine and fir, and this is kind of the traditional staircase in the back. That is the staircase that you can take. We're aging in place now, right? So we have to think, what happens if I have a heart attack up in the bedroom? Can you get the ambulance in and out? So those staircase allow you to take an ambulance bed down and twist.
The building inspector
Insisted.
required that we have one stairway that's up to code.
That is it.
And so we built one to modern code.
Perhaps we have time for one more question. This one. If not, I would like to, first of all, ask us to thank Ed and Al. You are absolutely wonderful neighbors and your home is absolutely good. As you drive by from now on, give them a wave.
Little wave.
Quick 2 to the point between 8 and 5. And we are delighted to have you there and you're lovely. Thank you so much.
I was just talking to Laura, I think. We would not have gotten this house without RiverMead. RiverMead had a number of offers. Everybody wanted to slam the house to the ground and make condo. And we showed up and said, hey, we're kind of crazy. This is who we are. We might sound really crazy, but we can do this. But we got to do a couple of things. We got to get some money by selling our other house. And we got to do enough due diligence that we can work through it. We presented a 20-page proposal December 26th and thought, oh, they'll never go for that. And they did. The board went for that. And it was a real partnership to save this house. So Al and I are very grateful for RiverMead. We're grateful for many of the friends that we've met here that have let it go into their own houses so that we can keep this, and we hope that it will be here for another 200 years. If anyone would like a brochure, there's brochures here on the house. It gives you a history and gives you some pictures.
Thank you. And thank you so much.
I think I need to take a picture of your house.